welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Wendy Dillard here. Today is Friday, December 15th, 2017, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're here for your last daily dose of happy for the regular week, although there's another one coming up on Sunday morning if you like to do that one. But for the last one of the week, I think we have a good topic today, Wendy, because everything's always working out for us. So what's our topic today?
It's everything's always working out for us. That is the topic of the day.
And sometimes it waits to the last second before it works out, because that's exactly what happened here. But it does work out, and that's the best part. It just keeps working out.
It always does. And, you know, on yesterday's show, we had talked about how I had a topic, which normally you're the one who comes up with the topics, and you were blank, and I had one. And so it's like, there's evidence of everything's always working out for us.
That's very true.
And then
yes.
Today, when I called in, you were having some phone technical somethings, and we ran up against, 45 seconds before start time, and you said, we don't have a topic. And then I threw out everything's always working out for us. And what's, I think, kind of cool about that is I asked, maybe about an hour ago, wonder what our topic will be. And that phrase is what really did come into my thoughts.
Oh, no kidding.
But I didn't have any supporting ideas as to what we would do with it, so I just kind of threw it to the side. And I thought, this must be one of those days that Walt will have a topic. And so when you didn't, and I threw that out there, it's like, I really already had that topic. I just didn't give it enough attention to realize that was going to be our topic.
And it turns out it's accurate because literally, first of all, the good news is I am now broadcasting from my computer again, and it's sounding good, which is a really nice change. And there's no internet drops, and we've got no static, and we've got no clipping. I mean, it's all working properly. Plus, on top of that, I have a backup computer that hasn't worked in literally years. I've got that working now, so that if anything goes wrong with this one, I've got a backup. It's like everything's coming together. This is a good day. This is a really, really good day. Do I sound excited? I feel excited.
You are excited. Well, and kind of my win for the day fits our topic because yesterday I talked about how I had done some weird twisting thing to my ankle and it was in really, really, really bad pain.
Oh, yes.
And to me, that's such of everything's always working out for me. And I love it.
I'm sorry I'm not being as responsive as I normally would be because in the middle of that I had one more glitch. I thought it was all gone, but so we just had a complete internet freeze
works
here.
Out, so I'll talk about this in a bigger context. I mean, I know we're talking about something that's happening in your day and something that's happening in my day. But, when you look at it from the overall scheme of life, even when we think something is not going the way we think that we wanted it to go, it somehow still has the potential for working out in a beautiful way. But sometimes in the moment we don't realize it.
Stuff on the fly, which is not always the best thing to do, but I think I've actually got something working better here. Well, everything fell apart, and now I'm pulling it all back together again. But your point is well taken. I mean, when you're focusing on what's really working well and taking your mind off the stuff that's falling apart, you get back to where you want to be a lot faster, and that's really what the bottom line is there. And excuse me, I'm distracted because I'm trying to do two things at once. That doesn't usually work too well for me. Trying to talk and work the board at the same time is not my best forte.
And I'll put it this way. Even when it feels like things are not working out, sometimes you don't recognize how much it has worked out for you until time goes by. It's often, how you say,
yes.
Hindsight is 20/20. Oftentimes that's where we see how well things have really set us up to win. I know for many, many years I was very disappointed in how I grew up. I was not happy with, the messages that were taught to me and the way I was, trained in this, and this. And over time, it's like the longer it went on, the more I didn't like the way I was set up. I wished, I was born to a different set of parents. I wished I had a different educational process. I wished I had different messages taught to me as I was growing up. But what I've really come to recognize only in the last couple years is how all those things that I was disappointed in have actually positioned me for really wonderful things. It's just that the meaning I was given of my past was not helping me recognize the wonderfulness of what was really available to me.
Yeah, that past really gets in the way sometimes. It's crazy how that happens.
Well, and it's not even so much just the past, but how we view the past, the meaning we give to the past, the meaning we give to those things that happened in our past. If we continue to focus on, I wish I had different parents, or I wish somebody would have told me, X, Y, Z, the more that tends to be the circumstances we continue to recreate. But what I know I have done is I have looked for new ways to perceive old circumstances. And when I look at it through new eyes, all of a sudden I go, oh my goodness, I couldn't have had a better set of parents to help position me to become who I am today.
Right.
It's like it truly was a gift that I had those parents, and yet for years I thought wished I had a different set of parents.
It's one of those things where for every situation where there's perhaps a difficult person in our lives, let's put it that way, it turns out that same difficult person also is an easy person, or a person that makes other things easy. And there's a yin to every yang, I guess is what I'm saying. So that even in the worst circumstance, there's a silver lining to it, and even in the best circumstance, there's something that's not quite right. So it's learning to recognize we get both sides. We get both,
we do.
And we get the chance to decide which part are we going to focus on. That was one of the most fascinating things about the Secret, the movie The Secret to me. There was that one section they were talking about relationships, and they showed the couple that's fighting, and they're practically tearing each other's eyes out, and then the scene shifts, and the woman is thinking to herself, okay, I'm going to change my perspective. I am now going to focus on all the things that I love about this person, and moments later, they're back into each other's arms again. Now, does it happen that way in life? Not quite. It's not usually that simple. But nevertheless, it illustrates really nicely what happens when we shift our perspective about what it is that we're thinking about people who give us a hard time. Sometimes, if we do that consistently enough, we can actually influence them so that it's not having the same impact anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, yesterday you said something to me that I really, really took to heart, and I thought about a lot afterwards. Because we were talking about how, when I was in the place with my ankle being twisted, that it was in so much pain.
Mm.
And you were saying, things like, well, if you can laugh, laughter will help to begin to shift things. And I was talking about how I had watched probably 12 episodes of The Big Bang Theory, one right after another, which always makes me, feel laughter, and because I find it very funny.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I wasn't in the place that I was belly laughing out loud, it didn't dawn on me, because you made this comment, something about, but over the time that you were watching the program and you were uplifted by what was in the program, little by little, outside of my awareness, I was actually bringing healing into my body, because I was really bringing well-being into my soul.
Sure.
And I thought about that and went, that is so fascinating, because I knew that over the course of while I was in bed, overnight, I knew my foot was getting better. And because I couldn't physically fall asleep, I was watching TV, or at least had it on in the background where I was hearing it. And as I was focusing on the words that the characters were saying in the TV show, it was, one, distracting me from the pain in my foot, but two, it was making me kind of giggle. Like, I can even remember having my face against the pillow and just kind of chuckling like, oh, that's so funny. This show is just so funny to me. And it's like, that to me is a part of everything's always working out, because I couldn't have prescribed the how to get my foot from really hurting to feeling better in the quick way that it really did but I was kind of following just what felt like the right thing to do, which was, use ice compresses. But what I did to occupy my thoughts was I put something funny on. I have all sorts of things recorded on my DVR, and it's like I didn't want to watch any of the crime dramas.
No.
I didn't want to watch any of the heavy-duty programs. I wanted to watch something lighthearted and upbeat, and that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, good move, by the way.
Yeah. And I just followed what felt right to me.
Yeah.
And it's like the results have been, to me, quite miraculous. I'm not a physical doctor, but I don't know anybody who had the level of injury that I did and have it within less than 24 hours be where I can put my full weight on my foot.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That to me is just astounding.
Yeah, it's I think it probably falls into the category of a miracle because in a sense that is the way miracles tend to work. They tend to happen very quickly, and this was a very quick result. But I think it's just great that you've got that much, mobility now. I'm sure it's not 100%, but in that short of a period of time, that's terrific. Because especially with sprains, well, if it was broken, forget it. But even with a sprains can take days to get over it, and you're turning it around a lot faster than that.
I remember years ago when I was in college, I fell off a curb.
Okay.
I was out with friends. We were having fun, and we were walking, trying to get from point A to point B, and I didn't pay attention to when the curb came up. Like you come to the end of the sidewalk, you don't go down a curb, cross the street, and go back up a curb.
Mm-hmm.
So I fell off a curb, and it was as severe as this injury. And I remember having two burly guys, one on each side, helping hobble me all the way home because we were blocks from my house.
Right.
And I was on crutches, and it was ace-banded. It took a couple of weeks for that sprain to take care of itself.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's like I've had, and I think it was even the same ankle. I've had this kind of injury before, and I know how long it can take for healing to occur. So I'm going to totally go with what you're saying. This is quite the miracle.
I think it is. And I honestly wish that there was more research done. I do know there is some research being done about the ties between positive emotion and healing. And there have been occasional, a survey here, a study there about laughter and healing. But I'd love to see a lot more of it in a lot of different ways. Because, of course, when you do a scientific study, you have to focus in, we're going to measure how laughter affects T cells and, all that kind of stuff. You have a very specific thing that you're trying to test on. And there's lots of specific things to test on. So, you'd have to do quite a bit of testing. But I have this feeling that if they did across the board on a bunch of different stuff, they'd have a bunch of really, really high-level results. Maybe I'm just thinking because it's a placebo kind of effect, and placebo certainly plays a role in it. If you believe you're going to heal, you're going to heal. But I just think there's more to it. And I think it's because of what my sister-in-law convinced me of, 2 or 3 years ago, that laughter really does pass down through the body and heal whatever needs healing.
Oh, I totally agree. Who was oh, golly jeepers. There was a man's name. I want to say he was a doctor, a physical doctor. Norman Vincent Peale? I don't know. I don't know if that's the right name. But anyway, I feel really bad right now that I don't have this person's name because this is like a well-known story. I learned it actually from Tony Robbins.
Oh.
But this individual was given some kind of diagnosis that was incredibly fatal, and he didn't have long to live, and he was in the hospital, and he said to his loved ones back in the day of VCRs, bring in a VCR and he made a list of all of these comedies, movies, and he just watched them one after another, and that was like a documented laugh therapy kind of thing. And he healed himself in like record time.
Wow. And
didn't die, based on whatever the diagnosis was. And I think then he continued a life works and study in that kind of thing. So when you were talking about, do something that makes you laugh and who is your favorite comedian and, just fill your environment with that, I totally get it because whoever hopefully I'll have his name by tomorrow. But it's like I want to say he has 3 names. But anyway, he really did. Not only did he heal himself, but he provided a body of work that let people know that laughter truly is the best medicine.
Well, I'm willing to bet that whoever the person was, he was engaging in a lot of belly laughs, because I've learned that's critical. You actually have to do the physical laughter. And if, of course, he was playing VCRs of his favorite comedies, he probably was engaging at least some. And hopefully there was some that actually was getting him to, get on a roll of laughter, because that seems to be where the best activity happens. But I would be very surprised if he watched all those programs and wasn't laughing in order to get the kind of result he got, because I really do believe it's the physical act that does it.
This would be a great time for somebody to call in and tell us the name of the person I'm actually trying to think of. Walt, do you want to tell them how they can call in and how they can Skype to connect with us?
If you are happening to listen live right now, it's Friday, December 15th, 4:18 p.m. Eastern Time. Give us a call. 860-264-5432 is the phone number. You can call that directly, 860-264-5432. Or if you just want to go directly on Skype, the Skype ID is Libertarian TV. That gets you through as well. Either way, we'd love to hear you. And if you have any stories to tell, we'd love to hear that too. So feel free to call in. We love it.
Perfect.
Oh, something else I should throw in too, since this is our commercial break. I want to encourage our listeners, please start sharing us on social media. We're starting to see signs of it, but we need more listeners who are actually sharing on their favorite social media channel. I'm loving LOA today, even with the technical issues that were in the past that are no longer going to be there in the future. It's been great because the people who are sharing it are they're starting that snowball effect going, and the more people who do it, the more we get that snowball effect. So please, whatever your favorite social media channel is, just put a note up saying I'm listening to LOA today, and just get the conversation going that way, because it helps all of us. It helps us here at the show because it keeps us going and keeps us saying, yeah, okay, more listeners, because it's not like we're getting paid a whole lot for this. We do this voluntarily. We do it because it's fun. We do it because it's just exciting to do, but we aren't getting paid for it. So you want us to get a little bit of reward for what we're doing? Pay. The best way to do it is get us more people to listen to us, because that just makes it better for everyone. And it also helps spread the message that there is positive entertainment that feels good, that gives you your daily dose of happy, and it does it every single day. End of commercial message.
Well, actually, maybe it's not the end, because
not quite.
One little more tidbit, which, and to me, this is the most fun part, is that if you, as a listener, love to feel good, how much more good would you feel if you knew many more people around you were feeling good as well?
Oh, good point.
Just think about the environment that we would be creating that would be joyful. We wouldn't have environments that we have to go, oop, can't go there, or we have to duck away or whatever. It's like, I think we can all be a part of making, the environments that we're in be filled with so much more joy and pleasantry. And one of the ways I think you can do it is by helping to spread the message of happiness. And I think our show is one of those ways that you can share and other people can be happy. So, to me, there's more than just, hey, we want you to share because we want some numbers that are big. The numbers are not as important, at least they're not to me, as knowing that we're really contributing to other people's joy factor, happiness factor. So,
and certainly,
now maybe that's the end of the marketing message, the commercial message.
and certainly the fact that we have the positive environment here means we've already created that much of a positive environment, so we're trying to expand it, which is even cooler. I mean, we already have some. Now we have a model to build on, and now we're spreading it around. So, yeah. Okay, that is really the end of the commercial message. No more. We're done.
Okay, so now, back to the topic. Everything's always working out for us. One of the other elements I was just thinking about was how, from a timing perspective, okay, I'm going to use my ankle getting hurt the other day, just from a everything always works out for me perspective. So where I fell was on my own driveway.
Right.
I was there with a friend, and so I wasn't alone.
Good.
Nothing in my clothing, I had a pretty good fall. None of my clothing even tore.
Wow.
That to me is part of, I was wearing one of my favorite shirts, and it's like, it didn't get torn, it didn't get scraped, nothing happened to that. So to me, that's part of everything's always working out. My girlfriend and I were heading out to a restaurant to celebrate her birthday, And at that time, my foot hadn't started swelling, so I wasn't even aware of it being a problem. So nothing impacted the celebration of her birthday.
Wow.
Then by the time I realized, oh, wow, my foot's really getting big and throbbing and hurting, by that point, we'd already gotten me home, and I was in my own home environment, and I think everybody can attest to if you don't feel good, you'd rather be at home while, in a place that nurtures you versus someplace else.
Oh, yeah.
So I was already at home. It was already nighttime. I have a great bed. I told you I had this Sleep Number bed where every part of it elevates and massages. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, hey, I had everything taken care of for me. And then the other great thing is it happened at night when I wasn't in a position that I had to do anything with my foot.
Oh, yeah.
I could let it rest. I could elevate it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other great thing of talk about everything always works out for me is I don't have a job to go to. I work from my home office.
Right. Yeah,
so I only had to hobble from one room to another.
Yeah, you didn't have to actually try to operate a car.
I could sit all day long.
Yeah.
And every now and then get another ice pack and just literally put my foot on the ice pack. And it's like every single element, as I thought about it, was kind of like best case scenario.
So now we have a whole bunch of listeners who are asking, okay, so how can I get one of those jobs where I don't have to be driving every day? If anything happens and I'm at home already and I can be putting my foot up.
Well, and I'll comment to this, that when I took this job over 10 years ago, I had a list of criteria of the things that I was looking for in my next job.
Okay.
And work from home was one of the biggest criteria.
Makes sense.
So I go and I interview, and it was one of the best interviews I ever had. I took the job, but I knew it didn't meet the criteria of working from home. And I was a little disappointed in that, but I had so much excitement about the overall opportunity that I went, okay, well, maybe you don't get everything, and I just kind of blew it off. But then I started to notice that the office that I worked at, nobody I supported actually worked in that office.
Uh-huh.
And most of my company works virtually.
Uh-huh.
And the team of people that I work with specifically are kind of all spread out all over the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started asking other people that I would run into in my office environment who I knew worked from home but that just happened to be passing through the office that day, like what circumstances determined that they could work from home. And over time, I collected enough information, if you will,
mm-hmm.
that I put together a business case story to present to my boss. And so one day I was talking to him, and here's the funny part. I'm sitting in the office talking to my boss who works in his home office. And I discussed the possibility of working from home. And I gave him all these reasons. One of the biggest one is I felt like I couldn't be as productive in that office because so many people there were on business calls and they talked really loud. And so it made me being on webinars and virtual conference calls and whatever really hard to pay attention because I had all this distraction of people talking loud because it was mostly salespeople and they like to walk and talk with their Bluetooth on,
Yeah.
And so anyway, my boss thought about it, and he said, well, working from home is quite a big change. And I said, but remember, before I was hired, I had been an entrepreneur for 15 years, and I always worked out of my home office. And he went, oh, I forgot about that.
Uh-huh.
And I said, frankly, some of my business devices are better in my office than they are here at the physical office. And he laughed. And he said, oh, I'll tell you what. I'll say yes for now, but I want to reserve the right to change my mind. And I went, okay, works for me. Well, that was 10 years ago. The conversation, the discussion never reared its head again. And our company as a whole has actually gone into more of the support staff they want in offices. They're even building buildings now for the support staff to work in offices. And I think I'm kind of grandfathered into the fact that I work from home.
Nice.
There are a lot of people that know I do. A lot of people way above me know I work from home, But it's not a conversation we ever bring up.
Yeah, well, that's smart. That's smart. You don't want to do anything about the goose that's laying the golden egg, that's for sure.
Right. But, that to me is another example of how everything works out for me. Because I did know what kind of job I wanted, and working from home was one of the big things that was important to me. But because I follow my inner guidance and it said, take this job, I did. And then eventually, within 6 months, it became a work-from-home opportunity.
Which is very cool. And by the way, for people who are still trying to get themselves into the place where everything's working out for them, that doesn't mean that you can't have a job where you're working from home. Actually, it's becoming much more normal. There are more people working regular jobs from home now than ever before, and the numbers continue to increase dramatically. So we're not talking about something that's out of the realm of possibility anymore. This is something that's happening more and more and more. And I think you're right. More and more they want the support staff to be in the office. But even that mentality is starting to change. And I think it's starting to change because they're finding, when they look at what happens with people who are working from home and who are good, productive people, they're finding they actually get more productivity out of them. And as more and more managers and upper-level managers notice that and take note of it, I think they're going to become more and more open to the idea of letting people work from home, the ones who can prove that they actually get the work done, because that's what they're really interested in. The reason they want most people in the office is because that way there's some accountability and they can say, oh, yeah, this person's actually getting the job done, they clocked in, they clocked out, all that kind of stuff. Well, that's the criteria right there, whether or not the person's actually productive. That's all anybody really cares about in the business world, for the most part. I mean, there's some jobs you have to be in the office just because of the nature of the job, but for the most part, that's all they're really interested in. Are you getting the job done?
Well, there's something that I think sort of came on the scene sort of with the onset of Google and millennials, and how millennials work very differently than baby boomers.
Yep.
And they like to work in groups.
Yes.
And so the group element or the hive element is really important. And so I've seen how, because I read a lot of articles from LinkedIn, which is about the workforce.
Right.
And so, the companies that are going more toward wanting people in an office are doing it because they want people to work in a collaborative environment.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then there's the other thought, which is exactly what you said, which is to create greater productivity. And it's like a happy employee is always going to be more productive.
Yes. I think that's actually a bigger factor right there. In fact, I just saw an article, and I can't remember even where I saw it. I wish I had a source to point everybody to. But I saw an article recently that suggested that those open work environments, the collaborative type environments, are actually producing lower levels of productivity, which is contrary to what the people who advocate them claim would happen. But overall, when you look at the overall numbers, they're actually proving to be less productive than when people have their own spaces or cubicles or whatever it might be, which is an interesting thing because a lot of the people who are doing this are the millennials, and one would have to presume that therefore this means that millennials don't always work better in groups. They don't always work better collaboratively. Sometimes it's actually better to have your private space even when you're a millennial.
Mm-hmm. And, every individual is just that, an individual. We have different likes.
Yes.
We have different dislikes. There are times I love to work in a group environment, and there are other times I really want to be left alone because I can think in my own thought process. Sometimes I can actually think more productively.
Yep.
So I think it varies. But, the bottom line is every one of us have certain things that we desire in life.
Mm-hmm.
And whether we choose to focus on what we desire or we inadvertently focus on the lack of it because we're not happy or we're disgruntled because we don't yet have the thing that we desire, really determines the ultimate outcome.
Right. It's the confidence level that makes the difference.
And, even if you're not moving in the direction you want to, it can change at any moment. We can change the trajectory of our future at any moment in time. And it all has to do with what direction do we choose to place our attention.
And being consistent about it. We can't just say, I choose that, and then go back to our old way of doing things. We have to actually stick to it. We have to stay with it.
And then I guess I'd look at it and go, so are you really choosing it?
Yeah.
Or was it just a momentary, whatever.
A momentary whatever. There's a new technology term. Okay.
I like to make up words and phrases.
You were mentioning earlier, though, how we're all individuals and we all have different needs and different interests and so forth. And regarding the group work environment versus the individual work environment thing, I was remembering back in college, which was, more years ago than I care to admit, I hated working on homework when there were stereos playing. And in the dorms, when I was at school, the stereos were playing at all hours. I mean, it was rare to have them off before like 11 p.m. at night. And whenever those things were going, I couldn't concentrate. To this day, I don't work well when there's background noise of any kind. I mean, it can be subtle. I mean, because I do my work from home as well. If I'm working in our office room and my wife is in the living room doing something else and she's talking on the phone or something, I have to close the door. I can't handle having her talking in the next room. So everybody's different, There are some people who work beautifully in that environment. I've worked with some of them. Some of them who, well, actually, now that I think about it, Louise likes to have background noise. She likes to have music playing, something. She doesn't like it to be so silent in the room. So two completely different viewpoints on this is what I want,
That's interesting because I used to think that I liked noise all the time. And I've come to realize there's different kinds of noises that work for me depending on the circumstance.
Okay.
So like when I'm in my office and I'm working, at my desk, depending on what I'm working on, whether it's a creative thinking project or whether it's just something I do that's rote, determines whether I want music on, TV on in the background, or complete silence.
Really?
Yeah.
So different circumstances, different kinds of background.
Yeah. And, like, if I'm going to sleep at night, I like to fall asleep to TV. But let's say I'm staying at somebody else's home, because I'm visiting, and they don't have a TV in the bedroom. I'm also used to having a ceiling fan on. And, I like moving air. But there's a very subtle hum of the ceiling fan that if I'm sleeping in a room or even at a hotel that doesn't have any white noise.
Oh, okay.
That silence is way too quiet for me. And that's when I'm like, I do like noise.
I remember one time. I'm sorry. I remember one time that my wife and I were visiting friends in Vermont. They're friends that live near Mount Snow, the ski resort. And it was probably late autumn when we were there. May even have been winter, but I think it was late autumn. So it was pretty cold because Vermont gets cold fairly early. And they live in an A-frame. It's a relatively small A-frame. It's not like there's lots of rooms. So the spare room was in what we would otherwise call the basement. It was a finished room. It was a finished area, but it was in the basement. And there were two interesting things about that room. Number one, there was no window in the room, so the only light was, the light on the nightstand. And number two, the house was heated by a wood stove that was upstairs. So there wasn't a whole lot of heat down there either. And it was really interesting. So we had a nice warm comforter. I mean, once we were in bed, we were fine. But we noticed that we turned the lights off, we're in bed, and there were three senses that were essentially turned off because it was pitch black. There wasn't a light to be seen anywhere. It was cold, but we were warm under the comforter, and there wasn't a sound to be heard. It was like being in sensory deprivation in a cold chamber with a comforter.
That's exactly what it sounds like.
It's exactly what it felt like. It was a very strange... I mean, we slept well, but neither one of us really wanted to do it again the next night. It was not our ideal sleep environment, shall we say. And I usually like to sleep without light, but oh my goodness, that was dark. It was so dark you held your hand up in front of your face and you couldn't see it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, there is something about being in the pitch black that is so, like, I don't know, people who are out in rural areas get to experience that all the time, but I don't, and so it's kind of eerie, creepy, and exciting all at the same time.
Sure. Oh, yeah. It's got a little bit of everything because we have the association that if there is no sound at all, that's creepy. If there's no light at all, that's creepy. Like there could be something out there trying to get me, according to all the scary movie features and so forth. So yeah, there's reality to that. On the other hand, there are stimuli that do exist out in the rural areas that you don't get so much in the more urban or suburban areas. For instance, on a clear night out in a rural area, you see more stars than you'll ever see in a city. I mean,
oh, absolutely,
huge amounts of stars. You see aspects of constellations that you didn't even know existed.
Yeah, I think there's only been a scant few times in my life that I've been in an environment where the whole sky was just lit up with little twinkle lights called stars.
Oh yeah. And talk about having stuff to appreciate and feel good about. I don't get to have that very often, but on those occasions where I've had it, I appreciate being able to see so much in the sky, so many clear stars all over the place. And no city lights to get in the way, because that's when you see the best. So, it's all how you look at it.
That reminds me of something that happened to me when I was in like Girl Scout camp or something like that, probably in the 4th or 5th grade. I was trying to go from one place to another, and I needed my flashlight to get there because I was out in the North Woods in Wisconsin. It was that pitch black that we're talking about.
Mm.
And while we were walking, my flashlight went out. Like, I couldn't make it come on. And I was, like, out in the middle of the woods, and I was too far away from where I had just come from and really didn't know how to go to where I needed to go to without light.
Yeah. That's frightening.
I don't honestly remember if I was frightened, not frightened, or whatever, or how long it took. But here's a perfect illustration of how we are always guided if we allow ourselves to receive the guidance.
Okay.
But I was looking in the direction, even though I couldn't see anything, of where I knew I needed to go, because that was the way I was headed before the flashlight went out. And all of a sudden, I started to notice, what do I call it? It's like there were little, you know how like lightning bugs, I don't know, are you in an area where you have lightning bugs?
Sure.
And they light up with that green kind of neon look?
Right.
What I saw wasn't lightning bugs, but it was like there was some, maybe even tree sap, I don't know, but something scattered along the trail and along the bottoms of trees.
Oh, nice.
That were in front of me. And literally, it was the light of all these little sparkling things was so bright, it lit a path for me. And
That's
I just
cool.
walked towards these little sparkling lights. I mean, they weren't like sparkling and twinkling, but it felt like a spark. It felt like the stars were in neon green, but on the ground. And I got to where I needed to go by following these neon green little things on the ground. And to this day, I have no idea what they were. And my flashlight never helped me because the batteries were dead or whatever. But I had these wonderful little things guiding me to where I needed to go. And we could call that too a miracle. And that was the ultimate. Things worked out for me because I was not stranded in the middle of the dark woods. I didn't have to decide I was just going to stay there and close my eyes until the sun came up.
That's pretty cool.
But I got back to my cabin and I was safe, and nobody else knew what had just happened to me. But kind of like in the secretness of my own heart, I went, "Wow, someone is taking care of me."
Yeah, definitely. Well, you remember Apollo 13, right? That was the mission that they had the explosion on board, and they were worried about the heat shield and could they get back in time and all that kind of stuff. Sort of like what happened with the John Glenn Gemini mission, which had happened about 10 years before that. But Apollo 13, they were really afraid that the whole thing was going to blow up and burn up, and the captain of that crew, Jim Lovell, had total confidence that they were going to get home, which they did. In fact, they made a movie about it. One of the reasons he was so confident, he explained afterward, is that he had been, many years before that, he had been on a flight. Of course, he was a very experienced pilot. He had been on a flight out someplace over the ocean, I'm going to say in the Pacific. I'm not sure exactly where it was. And somehow he got his bearings messed up and ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he was out of communication range with whatever his base was. I don't remember where the base was, but he was far enough away that he was out of communication range. So he basically had to fend for himself, figuring out how to get home. Well, first thought was, look at the stars, right? Nope, didn't work. Clouds all over the place, and he couldn't get a high enough position in order to measure where he was compared to the clouds. I don't remember why. It's something to do with the plane. I don't remember what the restriction was. But for whatever reason, he couldn't use the stars. So what else was available? Well, there was nothing else available, except that as he's flying along trying to figure what to do and his eyes start to adjust, he starts to see down in the water there's some green glowing stuff in a line. And he's trying to figure out what that is. He realizes eventually that it must be the stirred up algae and so forth from a ship that had passed. It basically created a lane. And he figured, well, the ship is going where I want to go. So he just followed it. He just turned the plane and started following that line. And sure enough, it took him right back to shore.
Wow.
Very similar to your story.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. But he was actually able to see. I'm guessing that just probably like with yours too, I'm imagining there was probably some phosphorus or something that was involved. And so he had these algae that had some sort of phosphorescent effect, phosphoric, I'm not sure what the word is. And similarly, you had something in the environment you were in that also had some phosphorus in it, and so it was able to create this little magical trail for you. But nevertheless, the fact that it was there at all was the miracle.
Yeah, and honestly, I hadn't thought about that in 40-plus years. Wow. And I guess in a way, if I were to really stop and think about just different life experiences I've had, everything has always worked out for me. Somehow, some way, it always did. I always landed on my feet. I'm still alive. I still have a roof over my head. But things always work out. I'll tell you, I started using that with my mom. She doesn't live near me, and so we email each other a lot, and that's one of our main communications. And, she'd have disappointing circumstances in her life, and I would do my best to encourage her, through the words that I, would type to her. And I started saying to her, one of the things she might want to consider is how everything always does work out for her. And I would give her, one circumstance after another that I recalled in her life of how things always worked out. Because I knew that's not what she was focusing on. She was focusing on the current circumstances that for her felt very bleak. But I wanted to remind her that, God was on her side and that things could turn around if she focused in a way that allowed her to think about what she wanted and not, what was in her life at the moment that she didn't like. And, her emails for a while were yeah, nice for you, but, that's not what I'm going through. And then I'd get a surprise email from her, and she'd say, you are right. Everything does always work out for me. And then she would tell me this wonderful story of how something was going so south, and then somebody came in out of the blue, and, they helped her with something that she just had never considered was even available. Just one example, after my father passed away, she, was having to fend for herself in a lot of ways that she didn't have to before. And even though my dad was not physically capable of cutting the lawn anymore, he would be the one to, make the decision, well, we'll do this, and we'll call this person, and this is how things will happen. Well, now she felt very, unresourceful. She didn't know who to turn to, who to ask. She knew she was not in a position to get out there and mow a lawn, plus she didn't own a lawnmower. And she just happened to be talking to a lady in her neighborhood, and the lady said, oh, I know somebody who could cut the lawn for you. And so Mom's like, okay, I'll take their number. And then the next thing she knew, and she lives in a community, and the next thing she knew, the people that mow the lawn for the entire community, just out of the blue, started and coming and mowing her lawn.
Wow.
Nobody asked for any funding, and for a couple years, her lawn got mowed on a regular basis for free.
How nice. That's just really nice.
And she just said, Wendy, everything really does always work out for me because I didn't know how this one was going to get taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
But boom. She goes, and I love it. I see them come out and they have smiles on their face. And she goes, they have no idea what they are contributing to me. But I'm so grateful, so appreciative for what they do.
Which is what ensures that they keep coming.
Yeah, and then at a certain point when that was no longer an option, somebody else stepped up, and said, oh, I don't mind doing this for you. I'm out there mowing my own lawn. Yours is a big yard. I'll do it for you. Boom. And so little by little, I just started to love seeing her emails coming through. And at the very end, she goes, all right, you're right. Everything really does always work out for me. Because she just thought, no, that only worked for Wendy, but it didn't work for her. But now she owns it, and she knows everything does always work out for her, too. And because that's been my messaging with her for a number of years now I'm even starting to notice that when she finds something that doesn't look like it could work out, she'll throw that in. She goes, but I know everything works out for me, so we'll just see how this one turns around.
So sort of like covering her bases, so to speak. She doesn't want to fully buy into it, but she doesn't want to throw it away either because she knows that it works.
But now at least the very fact she's saying, let's see how it turns around, that is a very different way for her to think.
Oh, it is?
It's much more positive.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, a little bit of the things that I'm sharing with her are actually seeping in, but they're becoming part of her life experience, not just me from the outside trying to tell her what to think or, it's not even me just encouraging her anymore because now she's starting to encourage herself.
Oh, yeah.
Because she's believing everything's going to always work out.
Yeah, it's so much more powerful when you believe it yourself and when you're the one who's saying it to yourself and reinforcing it for yourself. So, yeah, absolutely. I'm wondering if we're at a point now where we can actually state a theorem, so to speak. The theorem is everything always works out for everybody, not just for us. Everything always works out for everybody. And, of course, the first thought that the cynics say is, well, it doesn't always work out for me. Why doesn't it work out for me? And the answer is, it actually does. You're just focusing on the wrong side.
That would be that's what I would think.
So I think we can state it as a blanket promise. Everything always works out for everyone. And like you pointed out, the proof is in the pudding, because if you're still alive, then it's working out.
Well, Abraham, like I said, I learned that sentence from them, and they do it from the exact perspective that you're talking about, which is it does always work out for everybody. It's just sometimes we're not focused on it in that way.
Right.
But they're looking at it from a much higher level. They're looking at it not from just this moment in this time in this circumstance, but they're looking at it from the entirety of your essence and your beingness.
Yeah, they're seeing a much bigger picture.
They're not even looking at it just from this one lifetime.
Right.
They're looking at it from the big overall picture.
Yeah, and they're seeing the sum of all the lifetimes going on simultaneously. So they're seeing, like you say, a really, really big picture. And when you look at it from that perspective, it's kind of like looking at the earth. You can not feel good about your own particular community or some place that you've passed through or whatever, but when you pan back and you see the whole thing, it's just gorgeous. It's just plain gorgeous. I mean, there's no two ways about it.
I totally agree. And, that's actually an excellent strategy for moving into feeling better about something, because oftentimes if we're really focused on some nitty-gritty detail about something that really is just not happy in your life, if you start looking at it from a higher perspective or from a, broader perspective, like, okay, let's say you don't like this one specific person that is in your family because for whatever reason, every time you're around them, they're doing or saying something that makes you uncomfortable, unhappy, or just, whatever. So if you look at just that one person and that's all you stay focused on, the entirety of your life could actually become really miserable if that's what you focus on 24/7. But then if you back up and you go, well, who else is in my life, and start thinking about, are there other influences that are more positive? Well, it's very possible that you hadn't even been considering the other people. And if you start looking at, well, who all is in my life? Okay, well, now who's in not just immediate family, but my extended family? Well, who all do I work with? You know, who do I go to church with, or do I meet up with at the gym? You know, or who do I run into at the grocery store? You know, like, are there, like, I love to go to restaurants where people know me when I come in, you know? And if you start thinking about people in general that know you and that you know, and that one person that's problemsome is just one of maybe hundreds, and you start focusing on all these other people that you really have great experiences with, somehow it begins to shift how you feel about life.
Yes.
But if all you do is focus on the one person that makes you miserable, it's easy to think life sucks.
I could take
but
it
if
even.
you look at
I can even take it a
100
further
people
step too.
that are in your life, and only one of them is making you feel miserable, well, now you can't say life sucks. Not really. It's just this one person.
Well, I can even take it to an nth degree, because there was a time in my life where I didn't feel like any of the people that were in my day-to-day life were people I enjoyed hanging out with. And as a result, I became very much of a hermit, very much of a loner, which is a very miserable place to be, by the way. And as I stayed in that zone for the longest time, it kept reinforcing itself, not surprisingly. It kept reinforcing itself in that anytime I did meet somebody, they were just one more person to be annoyed with. The funniest thing is, it took me the longest time before I finally realized that there was a pattern. See, I knew that the pattern existed, that I didn't have anybody in my life that, you know, I was really feeling good about. What I didn't realize is that the pattern was perfect. It was a perfect pattern. And it was happening with such a high degree of persistence and clarity and consistency that it should have just been like a big red flag saying, wait a minute, there's something big going on here. Pay attention to this. There is something huge going on. You're getting the exact same result over and over and over again. That's the kind of result that scientists get patents for. when you get a result that's that consistent, I mean, that's something to start celebrating. Oh my God, I've discovered something here. Now, if you make the thing that you discovered, well, what I discovered is that everybody sucks, then you've missed the point. But if you make the discovery that, wow, how is it that I'm having such a losing streak here? This is phenomenal. There's got to be more going on than what I'm seeing. When you start asking that question, now you're ready to start making a move. Now you're ready to start considering going in the opposite direction. And hopefully listening to a program like this tells you, okay, not only can you go in that direction, but here's where it is.
You know, what I loved about that story is how you got excited about being so unhappy.
Yeah.
Because you found a pattern, and that pattern excited you because it caused you to think new thoughts.
It reminded me of a story that Joel told me. Joel, of course, was a recovering, well, he still says he is a recovering gambling addict. I think he is long past because he hasn't gambled in over 30 years, but nevertheless, that's the way he looks at it. He said that back when he was in the throes of being an addict, things would get so bad for him that he could take a winning situation and manage to lose anyway. And to give you an example, he had picked I think it was like a ticket at the dog races or something like that. He had finally picked the winner of the race, and he looked down and found that he bought the ticket on the wrong dog.
Oh.
So even when he got a win, he lost.
Wow.
It shows what kind of mindset he had, and he'll be the first one to tell you his mindset sucked. It wasn't until he threw away all the gambling desires and stopped focusing on all the losses that things started to turn around for him. And boy, did they turn around in a big way. I mean, he's a very successful person today. But it just goes to show, when you get in that kind of frame of mind, it always works out badly. And it always works out badly because you're focusing on it always working out badly.
You know, my little sister, I used to think she was the luckiest person I knew. And what's ironic is she was born on a Friday the 13th. And so 13 is her favorite number. That's her lucky number.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
And she used to go to casinos and always win.
Uh-huh.
She does scratch off, and she always wins. Now, it doesn't mean she wins on every card, but she has more wins than anybody I know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when she would do a scratch off and win $500, I mean, there's not a lot of people that do that. And, she'd be at a casino and she might get a $2,500 pot. And it's like, holy cow, how does this happen? So I'd never been a gambler. And she was all excited because she was going to go to Shreveport, Louisiana, which is where they have a bunch of casinos. And she was going to go with her friend, and she invited me. And this was probably about 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, okay, what the heck? What do I have to lose? Ha-ha, it's money.
Yeah,
and
right.
so, I just said, well, how much do you usually take with you to gamble? And she said, usually about $200. And then if I lose it all, I'm done. But, and then the fun thing is if you win more, better. And if you come break even, okay, whatever. So I go there, and I go with my $200 in hand. And, my thought is, I probably won't lose it. I'll just play and, it'll grow. That's what's supposed to happen. Ha ha. So those were the days of the real slot machines where you put quarters in. I was
Right.
really disappointed, by the way. Slot machines, you don't put quarters in.
There's no more slots, right?
Yeah. But anyway, long story short, I lost my $200 in the first 3 hours.
Mm.
And I was so depressed because I lost it. And then, she lent me some money, and I lost that too. Well, really long story short, I just always felt like I never win, and what's the point? But I started to listen, just recently, I started asking her what her thoughts were.
Mm.
And I realized the specific thought she has to do with this is just fun.
Yes.
And she doesn't care if she wins or loses. She just does it for the fun of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I started saying, I want to do that. I want to win just because, and I don't want to have any attachment. And little by little lately, I have been feeling more like, well, I am a winner. Because I used to not even enter, sweepstakes because I'm like, I never win that stuff. But you know what? I'm winning a lot of stuff. It's not huge dollars, but I'm getting picked. I'm getting selected. I'm winning, which lets me know I'm shifting my vibration in that area. And it makes me feel good. And, I'm all about anything that makes you feel good has to be good, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Well,
Okay, some
unfortunately,
people might disagree with that as a general statement, but, everything's always working out.
well, unfortunately, the only bad thing that has not worked out is that we're out of time. But other than that, it's worked out really well today. So,
But we're going to come back next week, so see everything is still working out.
That's right. We are going to be back next week. So the show isn't over yet. It's just kind of temporarily stopping for now. Wendy, it's been a pleasure as usual.
We're just going to put a pause in it.
Yeah, just a pause goes right here. And we'll see you next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Sounds great. Bye-bye.